Welcome back. YouTube has crashed on my end, and we are continuing with another stream, which hopefully people will pick up. The beauty of the machines, and we have moved to the nature, open nature category, and I'll just read the definition, but we will wait for Elizabeth. Would you like to join in? And David, you're welcome to join as well.
Yep, I'll join you for this one.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we will keep Kevin and Jace as standby. So, Jace, if you could, I'm removing you, and I'll remove Kevin, and we will wait for David and Elizabeth to join.
Is that all good? Am I out?
Yeah.
Wow, Elizabeth, what has happened to you? Got some funky hair.
I'll turn it off and on again. Maybe that'll help. That's better.
Oh, I liked it before.
Yeah, so did I. The new look.
Okay, so we have Charlotte, David, Chris, Catherine, okay. Jace, would you like to pop back in?
Would I?
Okay. So you are in, and
Hang on. I'm in.
okay. And
I can't get in.
you
There's
can't
too
get
many
in?
people in here now.
What does it say to you,
It says
Elizabeth?
maximum number is already in.
Okay.
I'll refresh my screen.
Please.
Right, because you've got 6 judges online.
Okay. Okay. It's not going to be easy, is it?
Who do you want to be logged in?
Just hold your horses, please. Chris, Catherine, David, Elizabeth, and Jace. Log in, please. So we have 3 judges. Everybody, please refresh your screen. We have Jace, Elizabeth, and David logged in. So we'll try to get Catherine and Chris to join. Chris and Catherine are in. Charlotte, you're welcome to mute. You are muted. Just blank your screen.
Am I not in for this session?
You are on the standby. We'll call you back in. Just take a 10-minute break or 15-minute break. Thank you. And we should have something here, and we are waiting for this, and I will read the category for this. So we are in the open nature. This category caters for images you would like to enter into natural history competition but can't because of the restrictive nature of the techniques involved. You may use any photographic technique you like here, but when finished, your image must look natural. Good definition. And we have the first image. Hopefully everyone can see it. Please score. And we have an initial score of 78. Catherine.
Thank you, Elan. Yes, I'd like to challenge this. I'm on 88 for this. I kind of can't fault this image. I think it's a wonderful portrait of this quite unusual bird that I haven't seen before, beautifully composed so that it's flowing down through the image. It's looking in, was kind of looking into the space, but I also sort of feel like it's looking at me, to be honest. It's sort of looking back over its shoulder going, what the heck are you doing? Lovely light, bringing out those lighter feathers all around and that beautiful little fro going on. Very, very crisp. I quite like the way the light is even actually bringing the details of the plant through those bottom long feathers. You can even see that. So yeah, really nicely composed, very clean, and yeah, I'd like to hear some other people's thoughts on this one.
Thank you. Catherine. Chris.
So I'm at the other end of the scale on 68. I suppose the more I looked at this, the more I didn't like it, actually. And my reasons why is I think it's the whites are overexposed, so on the feathers on the top of the head lose their details, as well as the ones around the actual side that are sticking out. Also the black splodge on the right hand side, which the bird is looking to down the bottom sort of corner, is quite off-putting for me.
Jace.
I was on 84. I'm really there supporting you, Catherine. I might come up to a stronger honours, I think. I reckon you've been a bit harsh, Chris. I think there's just enough context in the background to give it some feeling of a place without being distracting at all. I think that the dark splodge is not bothersome. I think it's a great solution to this unusual shape of the long tail, making this bird hard to fit into a frame. So the balance of the space is really well handled. The delicacy of those feathers and the light coming through them is really nice. The long tail feathers. Yeah, you could say those white feathers in the mohawk and the belly are overexposed. That's being, take a couple of points off of that. Don't go too far. I think the feel of that being lit through by the sun and the over the shoulder smolder sort of profile is really characterful and neat. And so I think where there's a little bit to trim off a few points for technicalities, I think it's overall a really great image.
Catherine, you have the right of reply.
Well said, Jace. Well said. Yeah, the over-the-shoulder smolder. I'm loving that. Yeah, I think it's quite funny because, Chris, I can now see that you're right. There is a bit of blown-out detail there, but I also find it interesting that that area was something that I initially highlighted as a highlight of the image for me. That beautiful backlighting. Yes, it is a little overdone, and I do agree with that, but not a problem for me. And the weighting down the bottom right, I think, is working perfectly fine with the image. It's actually more interesting to me to have a little bit of something going on in the background than if it had been pure green. And if it's going to be darker, it's in exactly the right place for the balance of the composition. So, Jace, yeah, agree with everything you say there. And yeah, I think this deserves to come up. Cheers, guys.
Judges, please rescore. Waiting for your score to come through, Chris.
I'll just refresh.
Thank you. And good talking. The image's final score is now 80. Congratulations to the photographer, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges, and we have a score of 81, and we will accept that. David, would you like to say a few words as feedback to the photographer?
Sure. It's almost a chocolate box image. It's the kind of thing that you would really hope to see if you were on a safari. It has all the elements of a waterhole scene, with the elephant, with the it's just obviously had its trunk in the water, and it's right on the edge. It's facing in, and you have other animals of various sorts all around. It's just and it's beautifully toned as far as colour is concerned, and I just really enjoyed the scene.
Thank you, David. We will move to the next image. Thank you, judges, and we have a score of 75. Would you like to challenge this, David?
Yes, I think that it's a natural history shot that describes feeding behaviour of the dotterel, and I think that there's great separation between the bird itself and the background. Quite nice 3D effect there, and it goes well beyond the sort of record shot in terms of its understanding of feeding behaviour. I like the detail in the bird. The whole image seems very pleasing to me, and quite well composed and well seen.
What was your score, David?
I've given it 82.
Thank you. Chris?
On the other end at 67, there appears to be some banding around the inside of the beak, and also the lower part of the beak. There's a blue line. It may also go around part of the crab as well. So that, yeah, I'm not sure on the processing of the image. The black lines also in the background, especially the one that sort of runs through the crab and the beak and the bird, are quite distracting for me, and I suppose don't help with the separation with the background. So that's where I was why I was down where I was. But listening.
You have the right of reply, David.
No, I don't. I understand what Chris is saying. It's just that those things weren't significant distractions for me.
Judges, please rescore. And the final score is 74. We'll accept that, and we'll move to the next image. Chase, we're waiting for your score to go through.
Fine.
Jace.
Yeah. Just reloaded. Did that come through now?
Thank you, and we have the initial score as 70. Would you like to challenge this, Elizabeth? You don't have to.
No, I'm fine.
Would you like to say a few feedback, constructive feedback to the photographer?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this image, and the angle of the bird as it's banking, and the snow flurry, I think, gives a texture to the image that adds helpful to the frame.
Awesome.
I feel quite competent.
Yes, and we'll move to the next image. Thank you, judges. And we have an initial score of 84. Catherine.
Thanks, Elon. Yeah, so I was on 94 with this one. I know we've had another Arctic Fox, but this is another stunning image, and I think it's got to have some credit here. I had quite an emotional response to this, and I don't know if it's that I feel I'm getting a lot of expression from that face, and I get a lot of story from this. I think it's been beautifully shot, very simple image, very technically well handled. The focus and the crispness is all there, but then also just the little face. But there's something about the positioning of those front paws which is kind of awkward, and for me that's strengthening the story. It's almost like this fox can hardly get that other paw up. It's coming up over a bank, and it's really struggling here. So yeah, there's a lot of story. The texture is wonderful. The simplicity of the image is wonderful. Yeah, beautifully shot, and I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
Jace.
Phew. I was on 75. I see what you're seeing. I see the opportunity here, but the execution left me a little disappointed. So I guess some things, I don't know if they're little plants or sticks of bits of grass or something sticking through the snow which are out of focus, and they're just kind of distractions. The one particular one is down the bottom towards the right third. There's a little something in the sky as well, which I thought was a dust spot initially. Maybe it's I don't know what it is. Just little things which detract and kind of like keep grabbing my eye and take me away from that expression and that struggle and the tough feeling that is coming through. And I think maybe that's also in the in the handling of the tones in the image, that there's not quite enough contrast, or there's not quite enough something, and so it just that maybe that bleakness is sort of let down a little bit. But that said, it is, if I zoom in on that face, yeah, my gosh, it's there's a lot about existence out there and how hard it is, but also maybe how adapted this creature is, if it's just sort of grimly getting on with life. So I'm torn. Keep talking.
Is there any other judge who would like to comment on this image?
Yeah, I suppose so. I was at 80, and I was like Chase, I'm a bit torn as well. I sort of, because there's more space around it, around the Arctic plots, I get drawn away by all those little shapes and shadows in there. And because this is an open nature category, I think they could have been cleaned up and would have presented quite a really, really strong image. You know, when I zoom in and I don't see those areas, it becomes really quite a stunning image. I love the little expression on the face, the paw, like Catherine mentioned, you know, all the snow. I think also when you can see all the snowflakes, there's a real big snowflake sort of just out from the nose. But for me, it's those imperfections which are there but could have been cleaned up that draw me away from going higher. I mean, we're going up into the 90s anyway.
Great. Catherine.
Okay. I have to be honest, I don't see shapes and shadows and imperfections. And Jace, you talked about there being grass or something growing up, and I'm looking at, I can't even see it. I can see a slightly darker area sort of halfway between the face and the left of the frame, if that's what you're referring to. Otherwise, I'm actually genuinely a bit confused about these imperfections that you're seeing that are detracting for you, and I'm struggling to see them myself, and so I feel this image is getting a bit hard done by, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. Judges, please rescore. Good talking, and the final score is now 88. Congratulations to the photographer, and we'll accept that. And let's look at the next image, please. Thank you, judges. And we have a score of 73. Jace, would you like to pick this challenge?
Yeah, go on. I gave this 82, and I think it's definitely an honours image. Just a beautiful light where there's enough directionality, sort of modelling, you might even say, to give the texture of all those feathers shape, to bring this from just a plain image to something a little elevated. The off-center composition with the bird looking out gives it some tension. You might dislike that, I guess, but I think it's an interesting choice, and it is a choice which I like to see something that feels deliberate. The bird against the darker area of the background is great. Yeah, I don't see any major drawbacks. There's a bit of a, maybe the left hand edge could have been cropped a little to get rid of some slightly distracting elements, but I think that the bird is so captivating, right in the eye with the catchlight, that I don't end up wandering around and getting lost anywhere else.
David.
Yes, I think I was distracted by some of the elements in the image. For example, the twig in the lower left-hand corner, the white guano stripe down the tree, and the light orange leaf at the foot of the bird. And these, I found myself bouncing from the bird, which appears beautifully processed, but bouncing around and seeing these other things in the image. And I felt that the background was perhaps a little muddy, and if it had been lightened, it might have increased the sense of three-dimensionality between the bird and its surroundings. So I gave it 68. I'm listening to what other people are saying, though, as always.
Jace, you have the right of reply.
Right, yeah, no, there are some minor distracting elements, and I'll grant that. But I think, and as being open, they could have been tidied up. I think they're pretty minor quibbles to drop all the way down to not even a highly commended. And I would say it should be in the honours category for me. Again, just resplendent feathers and beautifully rendered.
I'm listening,
Thank
Jace.
you. Let's rescore. We're talking, and the final score is 77. We'll accept that, and we'll move to the next image. Thank you, judges, and we have an initial score of 78. Jace.
There we go again. I was on 85. I will admit that natural history is not my forte. So if there are glaring errors, please enlighten me. I think there's some vignetting which is a bit heavy-handed. I'll grant you that. But at the moment, is really nicely captured. We've just got enough eye on the parent bird to see that connection between the parent and the baby, and feathers are exquisite, and there's detail throughout. What else is wrong with it?
Chris.
So what was I? I was at the other end at 68. Look, I see thousands of these images on over the times. It is a nice moment captured, but I think that's what it is. I'm also struggling with the title going gannet feeding chick. It's not feeding. It could be asking for food, but there's no feeding going on. I tried to block that out a little bit, but it's a nice image. You know, you go to the gannet colony at that time of the year, you'll get thousands of these types of images. So yeah, nicely captured, and that's why I had it as a high acceptance.
You have a right of reply, Jace.
Yeah, so that might be my lack of experience in this area showing, not knowing how common this might be, but I think it's, what score was it on already? 70 something.
78.
Ah, look, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's definitely highly commend it. Sounds great.
Judges, please rescore. And the score stays the same. We'll accept that. And we're going to score the next image, please. Thank you, judges. And we have an initial score of 78. Jace.
The pattern emerging. I guess, look, I don't want to play comparisons between entries, but for a doctoral with a crab, this is really nice. It's beautifully lit, directional and clear, and good separation. There's definitely some fringing on the beak. That is the one glaring issue I could spot. Maybe around the feathers on the bum, as it were, but it's pretty tiny, and that's only present when you really zoom in. But it's crisp, it's sharp, it's behavioural stuff going on. There's educate me, team.
Catherine.
Sorry, I gave this a 74. Pretty much for the reasons you've outlined there, Jace. I think this is beyond an acceptance, and it gets into the highly commended, wonderful separation, all of those things. That's what's got me to where I am, I guess, rather than further. I don't want to talk it down, but yeah, I think it's a highly commended image.
Jace, you have the right of reply. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll chip in here because I'm usually at the other end of being low. So I scored I actually scored an 82. So into the honours area. I didn't actually see the banding on the beak there, Jace. So thanks for pointing that out. But look, there's beautiful details in those feathers. This photographer is lying in the mud. It's exceptionally close, waiting for this moment. The crab there is beautifully sharp. All the legs and arms and claws displaying out there. There's a lot of detail in there. The background is nice. There's that bright blue bit. It's a little distracting, but look, I think overall, nice low point of view, beautiful catchlight in the eye as well. There's details around the feathers. I think this deserves to be, at very least, a very high end of highly commended, if not into touching honours.
Bring it home, Jace.
Yeah, I'm convinced. Let's get into honours. I've got Chris on my side, which in this category feels like something. And it's the exquisite detail through the feathers. I look at the legs. I would encourage you to zoom into the legs and look at the detail there. There's a crisp plane of focus. It's not a deep focus. The background is dropped out beautifully. I wish I hadn't pointed out the fringe now, but it's the only thing I can really fault it on. And where, I mean, the composition is great. It's got everything going for it for a natural history image. I think it's done really well. So and yeah, the low point of view, I feel like eye to eye brings a new meaning to bird's eye view.
Thank you. Judges, please rescore. Good talking, and the final score is 81. We will accept that. And we have a new image to score. Elizabeth, we're waiting for your score to come through. Maybe refresh your screen. Thank you.
Showing that I've scored.
It's good. It's good. We have an initial score of 73. David, would you like to take that challenge?
Yes, I will. I think that this goes well beyond a museum shot. It shows preening behaviour, and I think that one of the things that I really like about this image is that the background is not black. We're shown shades of grey, and so that lends a sense of credibility to the image to me that it wouldn't have if the background was any darker. I'm slightly distracted by the white top of the twig on the right hand side, but overall I think I can't fault the detail and the credibility of the bird plumage and colouring. I think it's just lovely.
Thank you. Jace.
We're going to be getting sick of hearing me. A couple of things. Firstly, the bird's head appears soft, and then when you zoom in, it's actually got a bit of maybe motion blur, I think, going on, and that should be the point where I engage with the subject, I guess, and it's just too blurry around the nostril, around the eye, whole head, and that's a letdown. And I think where you enjoy the background, I find it too flat, and it looks like a false background. It's been cut and put against that gradient, and I think if you're going to do that, the cutout job around the head and the feathers leaves a little bit to be desired. It's pretty good, but it's a bit sort of stuck on. And then if you're going to do that with the background, then I would have chosen something a little more satisfying. It could be wrong. It could be painted enclosure or something maybe, but I suspect it's a fake gradient. So and I think it hasn't. I think with the lighting on the subject, it's at odds with that flat, smooth background.
Thank you, Jace.
David,
you have
what did I get it? I get it 60 something. 67.
Yes, 67. David, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I did notice the slight blurring around the head, but the bird is preening. That they move when they preen. You know, it's I saw it as an entirely natural part of the activity, and one of the things that in fact separated it from a straight museum shot, where you're trying to show detail in a way that people can identify all the parts of the bird and colouring and all that sort of stuff that goes with a record shot. So the motion blur certainly didn't put me off. I think you might have a point about the background. I was perhaps over relieved, I suppose, that it wasn't a totally black background. Maybe I made too much of the grading, but there we go.
Judges, please rescore. And the final score is 74. Thank you for the discussion. We'll accept that. Thank you, judges. And we have an initial score of 75. Elizabeth, would you like to challenge this image?
Yeah, when you read out 75, I thought you might call me out. I think this image has been quite well handled. I can't fault it really. The eyes and the red face really draw you in, and the only suggestion I would make, well, it's probably not possible now, but to take a little bit off the left and to add a bit to the right. But, you know, if the monkey had been a little bit positioned just slightly to the left, just to bring those eyes not quite so close to the right hand edge of the frame. Other than that, I think this is a really competent image, showing these monkeys in their little pools. Well, there's no snow, but...
What was your score, Elizabeth?
Hang on. 83.
Thank you. Catherine?
Totally agree. Very competent image of one of these monkeys in its environment. I've unfortunately seen quite a lot of these images that are also very competent. Lovely engagement with the subject, great colour palette. Obviously, yeah, as you say, the pink makes it pop. For all of those reasons, I gave it a 68, which is a high acceptance, but I don't see anything that the photographer has brought here that particularly elevates it above the myriad of other images of these particular monkeys. You know, I think it's really strong. Yeah, very competent. So it's a 68 from me. I am listening. I'm happy to hear a bit more, but that's where I'm at the moment.
Elizabeth, you have the right of reply.
You know, I've seen lots of these monkeys in photographs as well, but I'm just judging on what we've got in front of us, not comparing them.
Judges, let's rescore, please. Thank you, judges, and the score remains the same. We'll accept that, and we'll move to the next image. Thank you, judges, and we have a score of 79. Jace.
All right, I can get one more point out of this. Let's get it in honours. I gave it 87. Might have got carried away, but it's a bit different to a lot of other this type of image. It's got some ethereal quality. It's got some storytelling. I think the little bit of a squint in the eye combined with the ruffled feathers feels like, you know, it's a tough day at work for this little guy. It's not always easy out there, and sometimes you're just struggling on as the wind blows, and you've got to just get on with life. And I think that little storytelling element, that little feel of like the conditions aren't perfect, you know, I think that adds an extra dimension, and I want to roll with that.
David.
And I think that the thing that I find most disturbing about this image is the lower quarter of the image, and it just, I find it's a distraction from the beautiful detail in the bird itself, and also I think it's tightly cropped, and I'm left feeling that I'd like to see more of the environment in which it's living. It wouldn't take much, but it just seems as though the photographer has attempted to fill the frame with the subject rather than fill the frame with meaning. By which I mean including some of the bird's surroundings, so that we can see where it lives and what it's doing in relation to that.
What was your score, David?
My score was 71.
Catherine, would you like to?
I'd listen to some other opinions on it, for sure.
Great. Yeah, I gave this 86. I'm totally with you, Jace. I don't think you're getting carried away in the slightest. It is different. It is different, and I love that word ethereal that you used there, and the storytelling. I get a really strong story, as you say, the squint, the ruffled feathers. For me, that lower quarter that's bothering you, that is the story. That this bird is having a hard day at the office, is struggling against the elements. You're getting that, you sort of the sense of the whiteout going on there. So that whiter bit at the bottom is adding it to it for me. And I think also the close crop is a strength, in my opinion, that's taking me into this bird's world. It's really struggling. There's also just something I can't quite put into words, very beautiful about that flow of the feathers, that wing and coming out to the tail. It's a really beautiful bird. The colour palette is stunning, and I just want to stare at that. It's like a bit like a painting somehow. I think this is a beautiful image, and it's really a high honours one for me.
Chris, would you like to add something to the discussion?
Yeah, I was up I was at 80. The only thing I will add in here is I really enjoyed the little tiny feather in the beak. Right, so sort of like a nugget of gold in there. I get the story, I get everything else. I'm with you, Catherine, that the lower half of the image actually adds to that story of it's a rough day. Yeah, but don't forget that little feather in the beak.
Jace, bring it home.
Thank you, Chris. That was the detail I was saving for my closing argument. But you've done it perfectly. No, it is gorgeous. The color is beautiful, and the repetition of shape through those feathers. The tonality is just it's held back just enough that the restraint of the photographer to not crank the sliders and shove this in our faces, but just to leave it subtle but sharp where it needs to be, and it says so much. And I think I agree that with Catherine that some of your weaknesses are actually the greatest strengths for me. So it's their own, but I'm sure we can get this over the line into the 80s.
Thank you, Jace.
Yeah, Jace, I've
David, we don't have the right of reply over and over. You had your piece, and Jace was closing this. We need to move on, and it's okay.
We can chat about it later.
You can chat about it later. At this point, I'm asking you to rescore.
Okay.
Thank you, judges. Good discussion, and the final score is 82. Good work, judges. And we have a next image, please. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 88. Catherine.
Well, thanks, Elon. So, yeah, I gave this a 95. For me, in the prejudging, this was one of the strongest images. It's a really memorable shot. I think it's just beautifully handled. What a character this little bird is. You've got the moment, you've got the preening, the colour, just the bedraggled nature of this bird, but it's so beautiful. And it's this, I haven't seen a Kia depicted like this before. It's quite an unusual stance, and I think it's been composed really, really well, and that square crop is really working for this. It's isolated from the background. The colour palette's great, nice, simple. You've got a sense of the environment and a little hint of the snow at the bottom left there. So yeah, there's so much that's working, I think, in this, and it's a real portrait as well as a documentary kind of photo.
Chris.
If I was the lowest, then there isn't much to go because I was on 82. So I enjoyed it too. Like, I really did like it. While you've been talking, I've been just zooming in and seeing all the details in the feathers and everything else like that. It's, we talk about the last image having a rough day. This one's also having a bad hair day. It's pretty wild out there by the looks of things. I'm enjoying it. I'm listening. But yeah, like I said, if I'm the lowest and I was on 82.
David.
I scored this at 90, and it's one of my favourite images of all the ones in the pre-scoring. I think it's just fantastic.
Thank you. Jace.
I was on 93, and maybe a bit of a coward. The thing that kept me at 93 and made me even hesitate about going to the 90s, and I'm going to address it because I think if we're going to talk about this at this level, we have to be critical as well. The Kia, the bird is absolutely amazing. I've never seen one a shot like it. But the rock, there's a whole lot of haphazard cloning, which unfortunately is the one thing that lets down the image. And maybe I'm being unfair, but there's a bunch of repeated rock patterns there, which obviously there was something in the foreground that was distracting or something, but that's been removed. And if that had been done with a little more finesse, I'd be at 98. because I think the bird itself is just so cool. I love the portrait of a Kia here, looking a little more than bedraggled.
Elizabeth, would you like to add to the discussion?
There's not much more I can say. I agree with Jace about the cloning, and also what others have said about the unusual nature of this photograph of the Kia. You know, the way it's depicted.
Bring it home, Catherine.
I'd just like to say, damn you, Jace. I can see it now. I had missed that. How important is it? Okay, yes, there's some cloning, a little bit careless that's gone on there. However, I don't feel that the central star of this image has been worked on. I think this photographer has caught this character absolutely beautifully, and I don't see, you know, yes, but how important is the rocket standing on? You know, what an outstanding, memorable image, and I think I would have loved for it to be perfect. I was feeling I'd been a bit chicken, to be honest, on 95. And so I am disappointed to see that. However, I think the Kia is the subject here, and I don't think the photographer has been messing with that. I think they've just managed to capture this incredible moment of an incredible bird. As we say, we haven't seen this before, and it's fantastic. So let's forget that rock, and we'll just reward it anyway.
Judges, please rescore. Good talking, judges, and the final score is 90. Congratulations to the photographer. And we'll accept that, and we're going to move to the next image. Thank you, judges. And we have an initial score of 74. Chris.
Yeah, I'll challenge this. Look, I scored at 80, so into the just into the honours category. Firstly, I don't think we should let the previous image being the same subject detract us from this one. This has been beautifully captured in flight. You get to see, you know, the colours of the underwings as well as a bit of the blue and the teals on the other wing. What I really liked, though, what it really helped me put it under the honours was just that stroke of sunlight going across and into the eye, as well as the beak just being slightly open. Now, I know there are some technical issues, or it might be like cropped or a bit grainy in there when you look at it. But yeah, it's been nicely captured. Great position in the frame. Got room to move into it. You see loads of detail of the colours of the bird. Yeah, I think it deserves a little bit more than what it's got.
Jace.
Yeah, you thought I might be at the other end. I was on 65. So the technical issues that I can't look past, and the uneven patches of blur and grain that are sort of distracting throughout the background, and around the you know, the blurring is creeping into the feathers at the edge of the bird's chin, and a few other places it's, you know, its toes and things, and those technical things I'm struggling to look past. I think it is a great sort of moment capture. The color is lovely, but technically it's it's an attempt to recover a not great file, unfortunately, and so I couldn't. I'm happy to. I was happy to give it an acceptance. I don't mind it getting it highly commended, but I definitely couldn't come into the honours with those sort of technical issues.
Would you like to bring it home, Chris?
Yeah, the more I actually, the more I look at it, the more I see those technical errors, to be honest. So, yeah, let's just rescore it.
Thank you, judges. Please rescore. We're waiting for your score, David.
Yeah, I can't get the rescore.
Okay, try again.
Ah, right. Okay, and now.
Thank you. If you could refresh that, David.
Yeah,
Please.
sorry, I've done it.
And the final score is 73. We'll accept that. And we have the next image. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 76. Jace.
Well, I couldn't tell if I was getting carried away or if I was going to be the opposite end. If I was going to be the low score. I scored 84, and let's start with what I don't like. I'd love to get rid of that twig at the left, the out of focus twig at the left, and the light. I agonized over the light of the evening is beautiful and delicate, and it's really nice. The shaded side of the bird, I mean, there's a color cast from being in shadow, and I couldn't decide if it was just a normal shadow blue at this time of day, or if it was a problem. I guess what in the focal plane, I feel like the focus is just a little far back potentially. The leg that's in the water is perfectly in focus, and I feel like that potentially the head and things have been over sharpened to try and get them back. But the plane of focus is so small, and then that little droplet of water with a glint of sun in it. For some reason, that just tipped me over to decide to be a bit, to go a bit further and really hang it out there. So, let's have a chat.
I just can't remember, Jace. Did you declare your score?
I did. It was 84.
Thank you. Chris.
Yeah, we've swapped places. So I'm at the bottom this time. I think I score at 69. And really, for the reasons that you pointed out, that stick on the left-hand side, even the little ripple in the water on the right-hand side, that one doesn't fuss me too much. I really want the light coming in. The light is beautiful, but it's not beautiful on the bird, on the subject. And I really wanted to see some details of the subject. I do love that little, the foot raised and the little droplet as well, but to me that's probably not enough to take it up, given the fact that all the birds in the shadow and, yeah, that little stick.
Thank you. Jace, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I hear you. It's not an easy one. I think it's so close though, and I think it's a good image, and I think maybe we can nudge it up a couple. We can get you into the 70 range at least, Chris.
Yeah, probably.
Judges, please rescore. Thank you, and the score remains the same, and we'll accept that. And we have the next image. Thank you, judges. We have initial score of 78. Elizabeth, would you like to challenge this image?
Yep, I think that this is well deserving of being in the honours range. It shows the activity of, the feeding activity of the bird. You've also got it looks like possibly a juvenile bird with the adult, going by the coloration, and even that right down to the little details, like of the back foot there with that little bit of water and sand, and it's nice and sharp, good background. It all appears very natural. So I scored that a 85.
Catherine.
I scored the 72, and I hear what you're saying. A very simple image. It's got a feeling of moment, and I'm happy to come up into the higher end of the highly commended, but I guess it's not quite an honours image for me, but I think I've been a bit stingy and I'll come up a bit.
Jace.
Just quickly, I want to convince Catherine that it is an honours image, because I was on 83. You did right, Elizabeth. The natural history side of it, the behaviour that's being exhibited is great, and I think that's strong. But to present that in this way with such a simple backdrop, the decision to crop, not have a whole lot of unnecessary foreground just to keep a reflection in, but to give us enough reflection that we get the eye of the adult bird, is really nice. The light is flattering. It's nice. It's not phenomenal, but it's strong, and it's just a really well presented moment between between a parent and a juvenile, and I think that is that elevates it from a lot of other images of the style, and the clean presentation really kicks it up into the 80s.
Well said, Jace. Elizabeth, do you want to add something?
I think Jace summed it up quite nicely. Thanks, Jace.
Judges, let's rescore. Good talking, and the new score, the final score is 81. Well done, and congratulations to the photographer. And we will score the next image, please. Thanks, judges. And we have an initial score of 76. Elizabeth, would you like to challenge this image?
I won't, because I actually know who the photographer is.
Okay. David, would you like to challenge this image?
Yes, I scored the image at 83, and I think quite apart from the interesting subjects, we don't get so many insect studies in these competitions. I like the colour palette, and I like the way the scene is lit, particularly the light on the leaves, and I just think that it's been beautifully captured and presented.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm at the other end at 60, and what really, the eyes aren't sharp for me. And if I'm going to see a subject, I want the eyes sharp.
David, would you like the right of reply?
Yeah, Chris, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that they weren't sharp. I had just looked more at the overall image, but I think probably the plane of focus is not quite on the eyes. It may not even be on the wings. So, I take your point.
Judges, let's rescore. And the final score is 75. We'll accept that. And we move to the next image. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 78. Would you like to challenge this image, Elizabeth?
Yep. I scored at 88. I just like the activity shown here, and the part of that is tack sharp. The mud on one of the claws adds to the story. The only thing on my wish list was the catch light in the bird's eye. Other than that, it's nicely shown its environment, nicely cropped, etc. I have no issues with it at all.
Thank you. Chris?
I find myself at the bottom again. I'm at 69. Yeah, I like the moment. There's quite a bit of story in there. I suppose what held me back is the bright spots in the background. I too would have also liked to have seen. So it's really hard in a black eye, and to get some details in there, or a catch light or something, and maybe a fraction more details in the feathers. But yeah, nicely seen, nicely captured.
Need a snack, Chris?
Yeah, probably.
Elizabeth, you have the right of reply.
My only comment about the background is that that's just the way it is. It's nature, so I'm happy to accept it as it is.
Judges, please rescore. the final score is 79. We'll accept that. And we have a new image, please. Thank the judges. Losing it. And we have initial score of 77. Would you like to challenge this, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sure. I like the monochrome treatment of this image, and the white stark background kind of helps bring out all the little white highlights on the feathers of the bird. So I quite like the simplicity of it, and the fact that it's posing with its beak open adds to it. It's nice and simple. Keep it simple is good.
David?
Yeah, I think that this image for me suffers from the problem with negative space, and that is that the negative space has to enhance the meaning of the image, or needs to add something to the image which would not be there if it was full with other detail. And in this case, I think there's just too much white, and that leads me to see it as somewhat stark. And although I like the monochrome treatment and I like the detail, it just needs something else in the environment to just lift that negative space.
Jace, would you like to lift?
I gave it 67.
Would you like to
I
lift
think
the
Chris
negative
was
space?
I think Chris was putting his hand up.
Chris?
No,
Jace?
I wasn't, but I'll talk about it anyway because I'm not the lowest. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. I think I scored it. What did I score at 75? I like the monochrome treatment. I actually don't mind the negative space on the left-hand side. It's like the bird is talking into it. It could fly off into it. That's fine for me. What held it back for me was the zigzaggy twig on the right-hand side. I love every part of it until it sort of goes out of focus and zigzaggy. But I still scored it 75 in the highly commended range.
I'm coming back to you, Jace.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I was 82, and I think the negative space works for me. That's exactly where he's shouting into. I can kind of picture a speech bubble filling that space with just a wall of ranting and raving, like these darlings I want to do. And so it's sort of I think it's kind of it's an interpretive nature image, really. This is what I'm interpreting the point of this open nature category to be a little bit, to allow room for that kind of thing, and that's cool. The zigzaggy twig is a bit distracting, but it's also kind of a continuation of the bird's leg, which is kind of interesting. It looks like just more 17 knees in one leg, which is kind of funny to me. So I don't know, yeah, I think it's a good interpretive image.
Catherine, would you like to say anything? No. So,
nothing good.
Elizabeth, why don't you have the right of reply?
I can see what you mean about the little zigzag twig there in the foreground, but yeah, that would probably be the only thing that that I'd agree with as far as maybe bringing the image down a bit. The negative space I actually like.
Thank you. Judges, please rescore. Good talking, judges, and the final score is 78. We'll accept that. And we have a new image to score. Thank you, judges, and we have an initial score of 84. David.
Yeah, this image just made me laugh. It's just the variety of positions that the birds are in. You know, one of them's singing, one of them's obviously very wet. A couple of them are dunking. It just looks like a beach party or a party at the edge of the pond, and it just, and with all the water spraying around, it just had action, it had behaviour, and I enjoyed the treatment. I enjoyed the reflections in the water. It just stuck out as a fun image.
What was your score, David?
Okay, my score was 90.
Elizabeth.
I'd actually agree with what David said, to be honest, and I might up my score a bit.
What was your score?
80.
Chris?
Yes, what was I on? I was on 85. Again, I really love this image, or like this image. There's all the little characters, you know. You've got, you can see the beautiful red eyes and a couple of them. I was wondering to start with whether this is a composite or not. I don't think it is. The photographer is also either in the water or on the very edge of the water. You know, the lens is probably close to the water, getting those reflections going sort of straight down. It's been very well captured and seen. The splashes of water could have been like really big distractions, but they're not going over. They're coming close to one eye, but they don't cover any of the eyes. They don't cover anything that I see that's important. You've got a little catch eyes in the two on the right hand side, and the two on the left hand side. You know, the two red ones are looking into each other. You've got the two in the middle going for a bath and a splash. Yeah, I might have been harsh on 85.
David, would you like to bring this home?
Yeah, I'd encourage you to come up, because I think it's quite rare, in my experience anyway, to see an image that has such a range of behavioural variations and presented in such a comical fashion.
Judges, let's rescore. Thank you, judges, and good talking. The final score is 90. Congratulations! And we will do a quick swap. Elizabeth, you can take some time out, and we will get Kevin to join, please. Thank you, judges. And we have an initial score of 75. David.
Yeah, wow. 75 is an average. Puts me right out there in front. Okay, I think that...
what was your score, David?
My score was 90. And I think it's certainly got quite a lot of what appears to be sensor noise on it. But to get a photograph of this at that angle, with the amount of detail about the wing shapes and the food in the bird's mouth and the engagement, the eye contact, patch lights in the eyes, and the separation between the subject and the background, I think it's just astonishing. I would have been delighted to have captured an image like this.
Jace.
Oh no, I knew it was going to happen. It was on 64. What a spread. Call me a stinge. Look, the noise is a problem, but it's not the only technical problem I felt. I think there's an overall softness or lack of detail which bothers me, and then it's sort of it's an attempted rescue of a file that's not in great shape. It's a great moment. I've seen a lot of puffins with mouths full of fish photos, so it's probably suffering from that same conundrum that we've struck a number of times, which is perhaps unfair to judge it by those standards, but it is a it's something that is happening so many times over and over and over every day, and when you go there to photograph it, this is what you're trying to do, and it's not bad, but I'd struggle to. I mean, I could come up a bit, but I'd struggle to come up as far as you're asking. But that might be me. I've got an image similar to this, which I was pretty chuffed with, but I've also seen images that are a lot clearer and sharper and full of detail, and so I know it can be done better. I'm listening.
Is there any other judge who would like to talk? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chris.
I'll comment, just because puffins are my second favourite subject behind kingfishers, and I wished so much for this image when I saw it in the previews, and I wanted it to do so really well. I scored it a 67, and it's like the banding around as we look at the right foot as well. It's just been pushed. Like, I think it's a great capture, and probably I would have been stoked to capture it myself, but it's just been pushed that extra little bit too far from what the file is and what it's needed. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Kevin, did you want to add something to the debate?
No, I think Chris is well, yeah. I think that they've tried to remove the puffin too much from the background, and there's a lot of remnants of the original background still there.
David, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I think that I've responded more to the story than I have to the technical aspects of it, and I can see the points that people are making, and I certainly agree with what's been said about the technical aspects of it. So I've probably been a little bit too enthusiastic based on the story and its unfamiliarity to me as a story.
Judges, please rescore. And the final score is 70, and we'll accept that. And we have a new image. Thank you, judges, and we have an initial score of 77. Would you like to challenge this image, Kevin?
Yeah, and living in the South Island, I mean, herons are second nature to us and taking photographs of them. And I love the fact that they've changed the angle on this and got low down. And the bit that's in focus is the part that needs to be in focus. Again, using the shallow depth of field, everything else blurs out, but it's the head and the eyes and the steely look and that sharp razor bill that is the story here. Everything else is superfluous. I think it's fantastic, and I love the fact that they've got that head pin sharp. Yeah, it's a really good image, and it deserves better than the score that we're giving it at the moment.
Catherine.
I gave this 72, and I'm happy to come up. I think there's not only the photographer's angle with the getting down lower, but also the bird actually coming towards us as well. That might be what you're talking about too, but I feel like that adds to the strength and that intensity of the gaze there. Beautifully separated from the background, great colour palette. Yeah, I'm happy to come up from, not sure how much yet, but yeah, I think I've underscored it. Lots, yeah. I've underscored it at 72 anyway.
Kevin, you have the right of reply.
No, other than to say that it is as shots of heron white-faced or otherwise, this is up there. It is different from your normal range of shots that you'll see, and it is a difficult shot to get because that head, yeah, it's just a great shot, and it deserves at least an honours.
Judges, please rescore. Good talking, judges, and the final score is 80. Well done. We'll accept that.
Thank you.
And we'll move to the next image. Thank you, judges, and we have an initial score of 79. Catherine.
Sorry, took me a while to get that mute. I'm happy with that on 79. I've just spotted something that I hadn't seen, so I'm not going to challenge that. Thanks, Ela.
Kevin, you can challenge this image at the risk it will go down.
No, I'm fine.
Very good. So, Catherine, would you like to say a few good words to the photographer? Constructive feedback, yeah.
Yeah, great work. Beautifully composed. It's sharp. I love the way that it almost seems to be looking back at the photographer. I feel quite engaged with this little insect. Nice separation from the background. I guess just down to the right of the prey, there's an area between the leaf and the insects that sort of hasn't quite been filled in with the background there. So just watch your the post-processing there, but it's a minor quibble, and I think you've done really well. So yeah, very highly commended. Great work.
Thank you. We'll accept that, and we finished this category. Congratulations. We'll take a 5-minute break to judge the last category, which is people. So we will run a slideshow of the people category, and we will take a 5-minute break. We'll convene again at 7:55. Those of you who haven't turned into pumpkins. Welcome back. We are at the final stretch. Try to get that back on. Welcome back. We are at the final stretch of the 2023 North Shore Salon, the live judging, and we are at the last category, which is people. And before I read the description, we would just want one more judge to join us. We are missing Jace. Something happened to Jace, so we will wait for him to join us, and in the meanwhile we will watch one of those beautiful promos by Canon, which have very kindly sponsored a printer as a trophy. Let's see if Jace is going to come back to us somehow. And we'll just watch this beautiful two short promos.
Are you ready for your life to change? Are you ready for what it takes? Make or break creates the chosen. The moment is now, the time is golden. Dedication mixed with focus. No joke when it comes to greatness. It's your moment, you just gotta take it.
Yes, and we have a promotion for the Canon R6, which was coming up. Trying to get Jace to join us. Okay, and where's the R6? Yes, thank you, Canon, for your ongoing support. Amazing trophy, and no word from Jace, so we will commence with Elizabeth. Please join us again if you are here. Okay, we're missing Elizabeth. We'll use the machine.
I'm here, Elan. I just logged in.
Thanks. Okay, we have everyone here, and we'll try to log back in. Close this. And we have 5 judges: Charlotte, Kevin, David, Catherine, and Jace. And I'll just read the definition of the people category. Your main subject should be a person or group of people, not necessarily a portrait, but one or more human beings should be the focus of your picture. Apart from the use of negative space, the human element should occupy most of the frame. Human element. And we're going to commence with this first image. Judges. Thank you, judges. The initial score is 71, and we'll accept that. Charlotte, would you like to say a few words to the photographer?
Yeah, I really like this image. It's a really nice sort of environmental portrait of this person and what he does for a living. I like the fall off towards the background. It's not so much you can't see the environment, but it's just enough that stops it being too busy. And I think the monochrome treatment works well. So it's yeah, it's a great image.
Thank you, and we'll accept that. And we will move to the next one. Thank you, judges, and the initial score is 63. And I think we will accept that. David, would you like to give a few comments to the photographer?
Yes, I think that this image is quite nicely captured. I think that for me, it's lacking in a real story beyond the obvious novice clothing and what might well be temple panels and temple door panels. The kid looks bored, and there's no sense of a real engagement with the photographer.
We'll accept that, and we'll move on for the sake of time. Waiting for you, Charlotte, to refresh your screen. Thank you, judges, and we have a score of 81. Charlotte.
Yeah, so this image really stood out when we were doing the preliminary marking for me, and I kept changing my mind about it because the longer you look at it, the more you see. And I don't know if all the judges here have seen quite how many faces there are in this building. I invite you to zoom in and take another look, because it's not just the child in the center with that gorgeous, gorgeous face and the skin tones, and she, she's sucking her little finger, or what you might assume is the sibling next to them. But there's also two kind of ghostly, maybe parental types in that window as well, and I just think is absolutely fabulous little shot into this lifestyle of this family, and I quite like that we've been given the environment around it. Even enjoy the texture in the dilapidated wall, and it's just a sort of an external looking in screenshot of the lives of these people, and I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Jace.
So I'm up at 90.
I'm down at 68. Maybe I'm getting tired. I saw a nice documentary moment, a nice sort of supporting image around the lifestyle, but not a strong portrait, and so I was a little held back by that. I'm trying to keep in mind the category definition, but I did see the two other figures, and particularly the one immediately over the little kid's shoulder, the one wide eye peering over the shoulder is pretty endearing, quite delightful, and I think that is strong. So I definitely will come up a bit. I'm still trying to work out how to fit it into the category, and also I think the other thing that bothered me a little was just the higgledy-piggledy nature of the lines and shapes, and I can resolve that maybe as you say, it's a dilapidated house and all that kind of makes a little bit of sense, but I feel like the photographer could have potentially found a way to make that less distracting. So I'm definitely listening.
Is there any other judge who is keen to speak?
Yeah, I'll speak quickly.
Go,
So
Catherine.
I gave this an 87, so I'm nearly with you there, Charlotte. I remember this strongly as well from the preliminary judging, and I think there's a universality in that pose of the main character there with the little finger in her mouth. You can she's so unself-conscious, and it's just beautiful with that little comfort finger going on there. And then the figures, I think the mother on the right there, just kind of watching the photographer watching her children. There's quite a story there, and maybe it's a little bit creepy. Maybe they're slightly besieged in this house actually, and the kids don't realize it, but mum does. So there's quite a story there. I find the context around it is adding to it, not just the context in the dilapidated building, but the light on the building. I think if there hadn't been that direct sunlight, this could have been a fairly dull image, but the patches of sun are bringing a certain vibrancy to the image. And the colour palette's quite lovely with the blue and the yellow. I find it quite intriguing. You do go in there and you're rewarded with more. So, definitely listening to you, Charlotte.
Kevin, quickly.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I
What was your
reiterate
score,
everything that you
Kevin?
said. Mine was 86. I reiterate what everyone else has said, but the thing that got me more than anything else about it was that the photographer has actually gone out and looked for this. He hasn't just, like the previous one where they've sat on the doorstep. It's not a model shot. I like the fact that they've got this real life context to this image, and the more I see it, again, the 86 is too low. I need to rescore higher.
Thank you. Charlotte, bring it home.
David, do you want to just say something?
Yeah, I admit to having miskeyed. I got the numbers round the wrong way. I gave it 78 and I actually meant to do 87. So I'm up there with you, Charlotte.
Great. Thank you, everybody. You might be listening to me, Catherine, but I'm listening to you. I loved everything that you said to describe that. And, the category, I'm used to doing portraits. the category is people. So what you said, Jace, is having to sort of repurpose our mind a little bit for that. This is people. This is their lives, you know. It's a glimpse at them, looking at us. And I just really, really enjoy that. I see what you mean about the distractions, but I don't think that could have been helped in this sort of candid capture.
Judges, please rescore. Good talking, judges, and the final score is 89. Well done to photographer, and we'll accept that. And we have a new image. Waiting for your score, Catherine. Thank you, judges, and we have a score of 80. Would you like to challenge this, Catherine?
Yes, please. So, sorry about that delay on the score there. It was looking fine from my end. So I gave this a 91. This was another one that stood out for me in the run-through in a very disturbing way. Can't say I like it, but, you know, I think it's got a hell of an impact. I can't draw myself away from that eye. It's hideous. Every pore on that nose and the mush around the top of the eye there with the curve of the eyebrow and just the intensity of the blue. I feel like the image has a real punch with the contrast. The photographers handled that really well, and even the greenish tones that are coming through around the shoulders is sort of adding to that creepy story. So while I don't like it, I admire it. So yeah, I'd like to hear about it.
Charlotte.
Yes, I'm at the other end, aren't I? I'm at 68. And I feel like this, you know, that's a really solid, good, high acceptance. And I think it's very deserving of an award down in the acceptance range. Like you said, Catherine, I agree with everything you said. Don't like it, and that's why I put it down at 68.
Thank you. Jace.
I actually do like it, which may not reflect on me that well, but I really like it. And conceptually, I think it's really interesting, and the execution is pretty great. The couple of things that I put it on 83 for rather than any higher is I don't know what's going on with the straight lines, just our left of the eye. And if they were sort of throughout the image, that would make more sense or something. But I don't have a good rationale for those. And then the big highlight on the further looker's left, on the subject's right ear, it really competes. And maybe the highlights in general sort of compete, but that eye is captivating, and it's a constructed image, you know, or it's a deliberately created aesthetic which has been executed superbly, really, and it's supposed to be distasteful. That's mission achieved successfully.
Catherine, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I mean, the title is Penny Dreadful. You know, as you say, this is supposed to be distasteful. The photographers created this very disturbing image. I feel like those straight lines, I think that's just some scratches on the glass. They make perfect sense to me. I agree, maybe that could have been gotten rid of, but that's where I think that's coming from. Highlight. I do see what you're saying there. Not enough to detract seriously from the image. You know, it actually just for me can't compete with the intensity of that eye. I still keep coming back to the eye, so it's still working for me. So yeah, Charlotte, just because you don't like it, you know, this is the photographer's vision. Mission accomplished, as Jay said. Doesn't matter if we don't like it. You know, it's disturbing. It's working. So yeah, I would encourage you to come in.
Judges, please rescore. Thank you, good talking, and the final score is 83, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. The score is 69. Charlotte, would you like to talk about the image?
Yeah, I scored this one 75. I like the effort that's gone into the styling of the image. You know, presumably the photographer has, gone and got the flat cap and the toothpick and everything to try to create this character. I really think the lighting has been done very nicely. We've got catch lights in the eyes. The skin tones are great. There's detail everywhere. There needs to be detail. I really quite enjoy that sort of triangle, almost highlight on the cheekbone. I just think it's a really lovely portrait, and we've got some of the backlighting, the sort of rim light on the face as well. I think it's been technically really nicely done, and that's why it's 75.
Catherine.
Just for me, I think this image could have been a little stronger had there been some separation around the body. He has become a little bit of a floating head with the V of the neck. That might have been deliberate, but for me it's detracting. And maybe something a little more, and I'm finding the gaze a little bit flat. So I think beautifully lit, very lovely three-dimensionality of the face. And you can see in the catch lights that the photographer's even put the reflector under. You know, nice work there. But I feel like he's sort of floating in that black space a little bit.
Just mention your score, Catherine, and we will rescore.
Apologies, I gave this 58.
Charlotte, would you like a right of reply?
I think it's at least worth a high acceptance. I agree with the floating. It's something that we see quite often. But yeah, it deserves some higher mark for the positives that are there, I believe.
Judges, please rescore. Thank you, and the score remains the same, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. And we have a score of 75. Would you like to challenge this, Catherine?
Just yes, please. I'll try and
Go.
keep it brief. But yeah, I
Go.
gave this an 81. I did feel that this was a really clean, competent, engaged, warm portrait of this woman. Beautifully composed. It's just got a really lovely energy about it, and the depth of field and everything's just been handled so beautifully. Yeah, I thought felt it was a little bit stronger than a highly commended, because I felt that this was telling me something about this woman, and yeah, deserved. I can't really fault it. It's a warm portrait. It feels like a moment, and it's got that engagement. So,
David.
Yeah, I scored it at 70, and having heard Catherine's comments, I think I'm going to come up. I think that she's absolutely spot on with it being a moment captured with a very genuine look on her face. So I'm going to come up.
You have the right of reply, Catherine.
thank you, David. I didn't feel I was particularly eloquent. I must be getting a bit tired. So I appreciate that you were swayed by my thoughts. But yeah, I just feel like this is really real. This is a really real, natural portrait, and it's beautifully technically handled. The tonal range, the choice of the black and white is just gorgeous. Thank you.
Judges, please rescore. Thank you, judges. And the final score is 78, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. And we have a score of 77. Charlotte.
I almost went higher. I just really enjoy the sort of alternative lighting, this insight into this person's life. It's called insomnia. It's completely relatable that you stay up all night scrolling through crap, and we all must look like this at some point to somebody else when the lights go down and we haven't realized. And there's the cup of tea behind the hand there. Some other bits and bobs in the scene, but I just really enjoy that lighting, the expression, that sort of, well, I've got nothing better to do, I'm not tired, nobody's up, it's dark. So just a really lovely insight, and not something we see all the time. So I gave it 89.
Catherine.
Okay, I gave this 65, so at the higher end of acceptance. And I guess without the title, I wouldn't have particularly picked insomnia, so I didn't feel like I was necessarily getting an insight. I felt that this was obviously unusual lighting, with the screen. Well, I've seen it before, but it's different from your general ambient lighting, so that's kind of interesting. But I guess I didn't get a very strong story. I got a slightly interesting lit image of a guy browsing the computer at night. So I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying. I think it's quite grainy, which is to be expected for low light situations, so that's probably not really a negative. But yeah, I guess without the title, I'm not getting so much of a sense of story, so I had it at the high end of acceptance, but happy to hear a bit more.
Charlotte, bring it home.
I don't really have too much more to say about it than what I've said, really. Yeah.
Okay. Judges, please rescore. Perhaps refresh your screen, Jace. Thank you, judges, and the final score is 80. Congratulations, we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. Initial score is 81, and we will accept that. Charlotte, would you like to give some feedback to the photographer?
Yeah, really, really lovely image, great energy. You know, you don't often see the portraits of this kind with this kind of energy. Lovely expression, catch lights in the eyes. The thing that let it down for me was just the loss of what we can see into the shadows down by the feet, and possibly the cutting off there. I can't really tell, so that's where I was with that one.
Okay. We will accept that and we'll move on. Thanks, judges. We have a score of 67. Kevin, would you like to challenge this?
No.
David, would you like to challenge this at the risk it will drop?
Yes, I think there is a risk it will drop.
You don't have to challenge it, David. I'm trying to say to you something.
Yeah,
You can just say no.
I think I'd like to pass on a challenge.
Great. So, Kevin, would you like to say a few words about the photograph?
Yeah, I think the photographers captured the kids really well, but I don't think it's any more than the level we've given it. Perhaps the high 60s or low 70s would be about right. The more I look at it, there's not enough in the image to make it any higher. It's not a bad image, or it's not a bad triptych, and it's not a bad group, but it's not enough to elevate it above others that we've seen already.
Thank you. We'll accept that.
Elon, Charlotte would just like to say something.
I just wanted to make a really quick comment. The photographer's logo was on all of those images, and it really shouldn't have been there.
Let's score the new image. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 76. Charlotte.
Sorry, guys. I actually thought I was being a bit cautious about this image. There's so much here to look at. Reflecting back, it's a lot like the other one that we all enjoyed in the shop. It's again this picture of somebody's life, somebody's work. There's so much texture everywhere. I noticed right before I scored it that there's all these writings on the floor, which just add more interest to the overall scene, the overall picture of this person. So I scored it 85, a bit cautiously, and I just think it's a really interesting look into this person's life, this person's shop, and beautifully handled and technical. Sorry, it's been 12 hours. I'm starting to forget what words are. But yeah, really nicely handled.
Please hold together. Only 10 more images. Jace.
Yeah, I was down on 68. I think this is a genre of image which has impact, and it's been post-produced exquisitely. The black and white conversion is perfect. The engagement with the subject is really nice. The reason I didn't go into the highly commended or honors range is because I sort of feel like I've just walked into the place, held the camera up to my face, and gone bang. You know, like it's shot from eye level. It's not composed, and it doesn't feel composed in a deliberate way, and so it feels a little rushed or something. And I therefore struggle to elevate it because it just feels like the shop is amazing, but the photograph is sort of like tilted and off center and just then the work is in the post production, which has presented it really well. So I mean, it's a bit funny. I could definitely come up a little, but I've seen this sort of a genre of imagery done extremely well with an attention to every placement and every angle and every choice, and this feels a little more casual.
David, would you like to add to the debate?
Yes, I agree with some of the things that Jace is saying. I think the fact that we've got some keystone effect and things are on an angle actually adds a dynamism to the story that wouldn't be there if the verticals were vertical and the horizontals were horizontal. So I quite like the fact that that's added some movement to the image where otherwise it would look more static.
What was your score, David?
My score was 82.
Charlotte, would you like to bring it home?
Yeah, I heard what the others have said, and yeah, totally agree that it could perhaps have been a bit more deliberate in the choice of camera placement, but perhaps they wanted to include the detail on the floor. We can never know. That angle does bother me as well, that sort of off. So I hear you. Perhaps I was a bit over enthusiastic, but I think it at least deserves to be in the highly commended range.
Thank you, Charlotte. Judges, please rescore. And the image stays the same. We'll accept that. And the initial score is 71. Catherine, are you up for the challenge?
Yep, so I gave this 82. I remember this one from the prejudging. I just think that this is a particularly good moment, really, to be honest. The raft is so nearly completely buried and the expressions are just fantastic. I mean, this could have gone in the decisive moment category. Yeah, I think for me this is just a particularly strong action / people image, and I might be on my own in the 80s, but I feel like we need to get it a little bit higher in the, a bit more highly commended.
Kevin.
Yeah, it looked like people going through a washing machine, and it made me smile to see the expressions on the faces. I thought that the way that the appearance of the water around with the bubbles and so on was a little odd to my eye, but I think that it's quite an interesting decisive moment where they're just emerging from the washing machine, and I gave it 72.
Catherine, would you like the right of reply?
Yeah, so we haven't heard any negatives, and I love your washing machine analogy there, and that explains the bubbles. I think, they're just they've been so dunked in it that it has just created that, and that's actually quite unusual. You see the big splashes and stuff with these rafting shots, but this kind of, you've just got sucked into this morass of bubbles, and they're just kind of popping up out of it and go, you can really feel it, can't you? It's really cool. Thanks.
Kevin, would you like to say a few words, because I actually intended you to speak and David somehow took the microphone.
That's okay. I scored at 62 because I feel that the action has taken over from the people, and this is it's about people. Over and above that, the closer I look at the image, the more I think it's been way over sharpened, and especially on the faces that look as if they've been lightened, but to lighten them and sharpen them, they've gone overboard because it's really, really pixelated on those faces, the back two faces. As an action shot, yeah, I don't think they needed to do anything other than put the action shot in and maybe crop it in, but as a people shot, no. It just does, for me, it doesn't fit the category.
I think we will rescore at this point. Thank you, and the final score is 70, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges, and we have an initial score of 69. David, would you like to pick up this challenge?
Yes, I think this is a lovely relationship image, and I think there's a lot going on here. There's all the interactions between the fox terrier and the dog on the woman's right. We're looking at one another. The woman is trying to pose for the camera and is laughing at what's going on around her, or smiling at what's going on around her. The other two dogs, one's looking at the woman, showing a relationship with her. It's and I like the fact that it's been done in monochrome, because that allows me to think in an interpretive rather than a literal way about this image. I quite like the tonal ranges, and the quite nice separation between the subjects, this family of dogs, and the woman, and the background. So I'm giving it 78.
Catherine?
I'm feeling really mean now. I gave this 56. I didn't feel that they were very successfully separated from the background, and I feel like the focus is on the gorse just in front of her knee rather than on the face. They're all actually quite soft. I think it's a successful portrait, and I put it in the acceptance category, but it feels a little bit posed. She's just sort of smiling for the camera. She's not sharp. I do love that little moment of interaction between the two dogs, and then the dog at the back looking up at her with sort of adoration. I mean, that is rather lovely. And yeah, I think I'll be coming up a little bit, but so I'm not really getting into the commended level just yet, but am listening.
David, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I think I've said all the things that I would want to say about it.
So judges, please rescore. Thank you, judges. The final score is 68, and we'll accept that. We have an initial score of 74. Jace?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was on 86, and this is another example of a sort of travel portrait, and this one strikes me as just that much more thought out, bringing the shopkeeper to the door, to the threshold of his place with all his wares displayed. It's cropped very carefully. I prefer probably a tiny bit off the top personally, to just reinforce that tight and dense layering of things, maybe a little off the bottom as well, just to make it really feel full of items. I think it's tonally lovely. Perhaps the post production on darkening down the shot behind his head has been a little heavy-handed, and the values there are a little bit weird. But beyond that, I can't see a great deal of things to be too concerned about. And so, if we like this genre, this is a good example of it.
Kevin.
I hear what you're saying, Jace. I feel the opposite. I think there's too much going on around him that the person himself just gets lost in the mess. I think if they cropped in a lot closer, so there was it was more about the person than the shop and everything that was in it. If it was a different category, yes, but it's people, and I think that the shop itself is too powerful, and the person that it's supposed to be about just gets lost. That's why I scored it down at 64. I just can't. We've seen far better previously, and this just doesn't come close to it.
Jace, you have the right of reply.
Sure. Yeah, I can hear an argument about cropping. I'd sort of talked myself into that as I was talking before anyway, that maybe the cropping could be improved. But I think the key thing is that the shop is the person. That is the portrait of this man. It's an environmental portrait, and he is so much present in every item there that he's crammed the place with. It's his identity. So I think cropping it too heavily would lose, or getting rid of the shot would lose that. That shows all of his character, because that's what I suspect all he spends his time doing.
Judges, please rescore. Good discussion, and the final score is 75, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 76. David.
Wow. 76. I scored at 91. This is one of the images that stood out for me during the initial scoring. And I think that I like the analogy in this image of an orchestra with the woman in the middle directing what's going on with the other players in the image, and I think that although it seems to be slightly too strongly vignetted for me, the overall impression is very watery and very balletic, and it appealed to me a great deal.
Catherine.
I knew you were going to come to me. So I was on 68, so high acceptance. Yes, very watery and balletic is the word. However, I didn't feel that the grace was there in most of the figures. The one on the left with her hair sticking straight up in her face is a little bit obscured. The second one in I thought was nailing it, and she's the one that you were saying was like the one directing, you know, she's got the arm outstretched, she sort of looks like she could be in a painting or something. And I think the third figure is also strong. I do kind of wish she was central because she's such a vertical piece in the, but But then after that, it just starts to actually look a little bit awkward again with the fabric over the face. And then the last one where she's actually sort of just blowing a whole lot of bubbles and coming up for air, it just sort of looks like it hasn't quite worked to me. So that was what was bringing me down from the highly commended range. And as you say, the vignetting is very strong. However, I am very prepared to hear more because I realise this is extremely hard. Yeah, Jace, come on, he's got his hand up. Tell me more.
I'm not sure I'm going to help talk you up because I'm only going to. I was on 72, and I think the one thing I would add is that the inclusion of the reflections, as it were, on the surface is an interesting choice, and I liked it. But then having the feet cropped, having just the feet cropped, I find quite irritating. And I just want to move back and give them some space, or use a wider lens, or if it's been cropped, I want to know why it's being cropped, because having them sort of floating in space and using the symmetry of the reflection might resolve that shape overall in a way that I feel like it's currently not resolved in the poses, how they interact and how they flow together is a bit clumsy. And so the one way I can see to resolve that is by including the whole of the reflection as well, and it might become a complete sort of circle or something. But yeah, I'm not. Might be talking myself down, if anything. So the more I look at it.
David, I think you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I think that all of the things that have been said are points well made. I'm thinking at the moment that I've been perhaps a little bit more generous than I feel about it now. However, I think for me anyway, at least it's still quite a strong image. And yeah.
Let's rescore. Thank you, judges, and the final score is 74, and we'll accept that. Thank you, judges. We have a score of 77. Jace.
Yeah, I was 10 points above that, 87. I think for a sort of fantasy character portrait type thing, this is superbly well done. It's beautifully lit, just gorgeously handled on skin tones, and sharp and crisp, and detail where it needs to be. The conforming of the shape of the flowers to the girl's bodies, sort of shaped her shoulders and things, is really nice. I just noticed when I went to look at that there's been some clumsy masking on the right, so maybe I didn't look hard enough. That is a bit of a shame, but I guess broadly as a conceptual kind of image, and with the uncertainty on her face, kind of lends it a little bit of kind of whimsical or a bit of humour, which I thought was quite cool. Let me hear some more.
Jace, why don't you hold and we'll get Catherine to chat.
Cool. So I gave this 67, so high acceptance. I do agree it's been beautifully lit. Her face reminds me of porcelain, and I think there's a really ethereal feeling to the whole image. The thing that stopped me coming up into the highly commended was the masking, especially around the top, the flowers around the top of her head, but also on the right around the shoulder area, and just a little bit of attention to detail. So she's got a few like pieces of flower just sort of sticking into her neck there, which looks a little uncomfortable. I read the face as blank rather than uncertain, so I'm listening to that because I want to hear a bit of a story about it. It's a very stylized image, but it seemed also very blank to me. So yeah, I'm running with uncertainty. That's all good, and yeah, I think I will come up a little bit, but that the masking is quite distracting, I think. But lovely color palette, beautifully lit. She really looks like a doll.
Jace, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, it is a shame that masking has let down in other way. And there's actually, the more I look, there's little bits of it throughout the flowers where there's masking issues. So I suspect there's been some work done to try and create that shape in post, and it has struggled a little bit. That one that's plugging into her neck, when I first saw it, I thought it was quite funny, like they were growing up around her neck a little bit. But yeah, I think it's sort of a bit odd that one's jamming in there and poking downwards. So look, reward the concept, and the attempt is strong, but yeah, some fumbles on the execution, unfortunately, have let it down a little. So do with that what you will.
Let's rescore.
Sorry, Elon just had to refresh. You should have mine now.
Thank you, and this final score is 76. We'll accept that. 3 more images, judges, we can do it. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 77. Catherine.
Yeah, I'd like to challenge this. I gave this 88. I find it really quite strong. Okay, we're back to the genre, the shopkeepers and stuff. But I sort of feel sucked into this one's world, where I didn't so much for the last one, but we're right in this cavey kind of space with this guy, and he's right in there as well. And I think I'm responding to that, the fact he's not just standing in front of this row of pots, the eyes traveling around here nicely. He's I think, got a good intensity of the gaze. The tonal range is lovely, and I feel like the composition's good. It's almost nearly a bullseye composition, where you just come into that face and he's the brightest part of the image. So yeah, this is working for me. I'd like to talk about it.
Charlotte.
Was a bit miserly down at 65 perhaps, but I find this really flat, really flat. There's just not enough highlights or whites. Just really quite dull overall. I'm confused about the lighting. I'm trying to figure out what has been going on by looking at the shadows, which are kind of all over the place. But I'm listening.
David.
Yeah, it's I've seen places like this in central Anatolia in Turkey, and it looks very much like that area. I think that although it looks cluttered at first to me, there are quite strong leading lines that lead me straight into the man. It almost gives me the impression of his life's clutter assembled, and he's showing it off, and it has an interesting character to it as a story because of that. And I gave it 83, I think 82, 83. 82, and I'm inclined to go up a little bit actually, because the more I look at it, the more it rewards more inspection for me.
Bring it home, Catherine.
Yeah, Charlotte, I feel the tonal range is all there, really. I see almost the full range and plenty of highlights and plenty of contrast. And then, you know, there are the bright areas throughout, but then the brightest one is the face. So the photographer's bringing you back exactly where they want you to look. And as David says, the leading lines are leading you there as well. So I can't remember what score were we on again, Eland?
Initial score is 77.
Cool. All right. So we're not far away from just getting it into the honours range. Just a little 80, 81, 82, 83. Off you go.
Off you go, says Catherine. Judges, please rescore. And the score stays the same. Thank you, judges. We'll accept that. Thank you, judges. We have an initial score of 75. Jace, would you like to challenge this image?
I didn't expect to be talking to this. I went back and forth on this. Dance, certainly not my genre. But it feels like if I was this woman, I would feel pretty stoked to have a portrait of myself where I felt so strong and really it's not overly polished, or like some dance photography I think leans into a stylized world of perfection, whereas this is a portrait of a dancer and the person, and I think that's quite powerful. The treatment of the shadows, that flat look, is not something I'm particularly fond of, but it's a stylistic choice, and I don't know if it detracts significantly from what is a really powerful portrait of this woman. So,
Charlotte.
Yep, I am on 69. I feel like this could be a performance portrait, which is taken during stage lighting, perhaps. It looks a little bit too good to be that, but that's how it looks, and perhaps it was set up in that way, maybe not. But I just find that lighting overly hard and harsh on her body and her features, really, really bright, but not overly bright at the top of her head. And I really do not like those reflections at the bottom. They really throw me off. The lens reflected like that and then cut off at the bottom, I'm not so fond of. But yeah, please keep talking.
Jace, you have the right of reply.
yeah, I didn't mention the reflection on purpose because it is the biggest detractor from the image for me. I think the hardness of the lighting is what appeals, is that in that it's not this isn't it's not in the world of flattering, deliberately flattering, or softness. This is strength and power, and yet it's not in the throes of a powerful move. It's sort of a quiet, coiled up power, which I think is kind of, I think it's quite neat. It's a little bit different from other dance photography. So I rewarded it at 82. Feel free to join me a little higher.
Judges, please rescore. And the score stays the same. We'll accept that. And we have the next image. Thank you, judges, and the initial score is 67. David, would you like to challenge this image?
Yes, I responded to this image in pretty much the same way that I did the earlier one with the 5 figures in it. That it just for me had a pleasing composition. I didn't want to score it any higher than the 70, 78 because there's no engagement with the woman. She's going to the surface for a breath of fresh air, and but I quite like the sense of her emerging from the cloud below, and the swirl of the material around her. So 72. I'm thinking that maybe I was a little bit generous with that.
Jace.
I was on 58. I think the cloud didn't bring anything good to this. It's sort of a bit confusing, and again, the cutoff reflection is an issue. The heavy vignette, the feet confuse me a little bit, and then the main thing is she just looks uncomfortable in her face, and so all in all, I'm left with a funny feeling of discomfort, but not in a good way. I think it's cool that this photographer is exploring this underwater stuff. and I think there's promising signs, but it's got a ways to go yet.
David, you have the right of reply.
Yeah, I don't think I need to add to anything I've said already.
Thank you. Judges, please rescore. Thank you, and the final score is 63. We'll accept that. And this is the end of the judging of the last category. Thank you to all the entrants. All power to you for being on the court and playing the game. The live streaming is now going to be stopped, and the judges will select the champion image, which will be declared hopefully tomorrow. We will stop the live streaming